your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. 8.6 beer. Intense by nature. And Locage. If the last time you went to Locage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you went back to Locage. It's gonna be sick.
For those of you expecting Tony Marinaro, the Italian stallion, once again, I am sorry. He's still under the weather, still not feeling great. Have no fear, though. The Hebrew Hammer is here. Or, hey, you got me. The other guy, Matt Ohayon or Hain Dog, whatever you want to call me. Don't worry, I got you covered, and I got you covered, Tony. The Sick Podcast is brought to you, of course, in part by Energy Transportation Group. From warehousing, custom brokerage, and transportation consulting, Energy Transportation Group has you covered. Also brought to you by 8.6 Beer, Intense by Nature, the beer for those who follow their instinct and live their passions in order to make their mark. And the Canadiens started off by making their mark on this extended road trip that they usually have around this time in Arizona last night with a 3-2 overtime win. And to break it all down and talk about all the news and notes around the Canadiens from one Hebrew Hammer to another, I welcome in Eric Engels. How are you?
I'm good. Happy Hanukkah, buddy.
Happy Hanukkah, Eric. It's nice to talk to you. Nice to see that you are in Denver right now, correct?
I am in Denver. Yeah.
How's the
Mile High City.
Weather nice out there? It's better than -4 out here.
It's mild, although it's been pretty mild in Montreal so far, so I don't think we have anything to complain about.
Yeah, we know it's going to get worse, but like I always say, -4, it might get to -30 one day, but that doesn't make -4 any colder, any not colder, I should say, any warmer. So let's start off. I mean, last night we'll start off with this first period in the Canadiens game. Canadiens come out of the gate. I thought they were trying to build a flow to the game. There wasn't a whistle for about the first 6 minutes, I would say, and then just it's all Arizona because the Canadiens take a couple penalties. I mean, what shifted really from those first 20 to the last 40 in your eyes?
I don't know, maybe the Canadiens woke up, and specifically in the last 20 in overtime, because the first 40 were pretty poor in a lot of what we've seen over the last 4 games from them. And, this is what it is. You get into this portion of the schedule. I remember Martin St. Louis was talking about at the beginning of the year, the excitement, the adrenaline flowing, and eager to evaluate his team once they hit like normalcy and normality. And here we are, right? Like you get to the home stint in Montreal, Tuesday night, Thursday night games where it's a little quieter, and then hit the road for a game in Arizona in a 5,000 person arena, and leading up to the Christmas holidays, and distractions come into the picture, and they've traveled a lot. I mean, I know they have because I have over the last month, and it catches up to you a little bit. You get a little bit tired, and their schedule is only getting more difficult. If you look at some of the websites handicapping schedules, they've got the most difficult one in the NHL moving forward in terms of strength of schedule. I'm not making excuses for the team. They're a young team. They're currently missing really key players, whether it's David Savard and Mike Matheson on the blue line, or Brendan Gallagher and Sean Monahan up front. And it's showing right now. Now, if you're a fan, whether I don't know what you're hoping for as a fan this season, whether you want them to lose every game or win them, But, provided you want to see growth within the team, I think the best way for that to happen is in a winning environment. And if you want to see them get back to just playing good hockey and fun hockey that's entertaining and exciting to watch, you should be encouraged by what you saw in the third period and overtime when they were able to climb out of the hole thanks to Sam Montembeault and finish off the game with a win. And, you might not like that they win a game, especially one that they don't necessarily deserve to win, but it does have value for them as long as they're, like Martin St. Louis said, accountable and truthful about the way it happens so that they can make corrections. Because, man, if they play like that tomorrow in this city, even against a injury-laden Avalanche roster, it's going to be trouble.
Well, you brought up a point that I want to talk about, which is this is what it is. It's a young team, and I feel like perspective is a little important this season, especially from coming into the season. We all know what happened last year, and then coming into this year, everyone thinks they're somehow going to be worse, and they come out of the gates, I don't want to say flying, but, relatively flying to what everyone thought they were going to be. And, last year, I just took a look quickly before we jumped on the air. And at this point last year, they were 7-21-3. They're 15-15-2. So already just the eye test purely, that's progression right there, right off the bat. And, you talk about the young team. It's also, we have to remember it's a young coach too. It kind of feels like Martin St. Louis has been here forever now because of just the way things ended last season and the way things started this season. But he's also learning along the way, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. But like you said, perspective is the key here. And the main perspective from 10,000 feet, from the Mile High City over here is that this is a developing team where the development of each player and the development of the culture is more important than the results. And the team is being coached in that vein. It's being coached for that to be the case, right? Like you may, with the game in reach, like in Arizona, where they were managed to straggle their way to the third period with the game in reach and able to win. Okay, then you put the hammer down and try to win. That's why a guy like Juraj Slafkovsky only got a couple shifts in the third period when he was clearly off his game last night. And that's going to happen. He's going to be inconsistent as an 18-year-old. In another game where the Canadiens might be, down a couple goals or up a couple goals, where the game is somewhat slightly out of reach, although they've been pretty resilient this year in coming back when they get down a few goals. You let the bench ride a little bit. You develop certain players in certain situations. You put certain players on a power play or the penalty kill. So I just think everything is in that perspective. Perspective is the key word. And I don't know. It's been largely positive so far. I think the main component you want to see from the Canadiens moving forward is the continued development of the kids. I like Caden Gooley and Arbor Jacki last night. If the team didn't play particularly well, those two guys really stood out to me on every shift. Anthony Richard is a really nice story, a 25 years old popping in and popping out on each of one of his shifts. And, you want them to get back to being entertaining. For the majority of these 32 games that they've played, they've been exciting to watch. For the last 5 or 6, it's been a little dull. So let's see if they can get back to it.
And that's a big name you bring up in Caden Gooley because clearly he's going to be part of the future going forward for many, many years to come. Do you find that? Well, let me rephrase. Why do you think, just touching on the power play for a second, that he wasn't getting, the time before last night, wasn't getting time there? I kind of thought maybe there's already a lot on his plate as, already playing top pairing, big penalty kill minutes. So, how could you add this onto his plate? But, every opportunity this kid gets, it seems like he's just taking the ball and running with it.
Yeah, I think you just answered your own question, right? Like he's playing a lot of ice time. He's playing in a lot of different situations to keep the power play on top of that when they need him so much at 5-on-5 going up against the best players night in, night out. It's a lot. It's a lot to ask, even if the kid looks like he's got wind to run a marathon, but when he's playing and is active as he was last night, I thought last night was like one of his best games, just in terms of his involvement in the play up and down the ice, defensively too, killing plays quickly. There's so much to like about this player. He's evolving extremely well. And he's kind of the trendsetter as far as the way the rest of the defense reacts in this regard, is that when he makes a mistake, he's able to shrug it off pretty quickly. And part of that is the way the coaching staff just keeps throwing these guys over the boards when that stuff happens. But the other part of it is it's mental, and it's something that's there's an internal mental strength there, whether it's him or Jack Guy or Harris or Kovacevic, who may not be as young as the other guys, but obviously has limited experience, came over here with 4 games. That theme on that blue line is going to carry this team forward a lot faster than a lot of people would have expected before the season started. I'm not talking about in terms of the results right now, but in terms of the build that Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes have embarked on, a lot of it depends on the development of these defensemen, and the fact that they all share that trait, that they can quickly move on from mistakes, and they're going to make them every game. That is one of the biggest things that I think has the Canadiens ahead of schedule.
Yeah, and it's just crazy to think that you just named 4 young defensemen right off the top of that are on the roster right there. And, there's still Justin Barron, who's just, absolutely looks like he's lighting it up out down in the AHL. And just, the prospect in the defense pool, just, it's rich with talent. And it's just really nice to see, that this team isn't just, these players aren't just stopgap guys. They're all young, and they're here to stay, and they're really all taking the opportunities to relish this and make the best of it, including, the poster boy for this should be Arbor Jackeye, because he's just been playing unbelievable lately also.
I really, really like his game right now, and it's not him beating up Pat Maroon. Like, I like his game in his own zone. Does he make a few mistakes every night that are not necessarily glaring, but noticeable? Yes. Is he involved to the point where he's putting himself in position where he's either going to make a great play or a mistake? Yes. That's something to like. He's bold. I love his skating. I love his mobility around his own net when he picks up the puck, his ability to shake off forecheckers. He's only going to get better. These are such key repetitions they're getting. And you're right, Maddie, like the prospect pool is something to get excited about, to the point where I think it's interesting that we're 32 games of the season, and maybe it's because we haven't seen the New York Islanders play the Canadiens, but I haven't heard anybody mention Alex Romanov's name. You let go of a 21-year-old defenseman who is absolutely on his rise into a legitimate top 4 player who could inevitably be a top 2 player on any blue line. And you'd think there'd be a lot more, whoa, man, we missed that guy, or he'd at least be mentioned. And aside from me bringing up his name right now, and aside from some unsavory highlight that we saw a week ago where he took a shot off the pills and it went in the net, nobody's really talking about him in Montreal, which is really interesting considering the quality of player that was given up to get Kirby Dach here in Montreal.
Well, that's it. It goes into Doc's play, right? If that trade is another, it's way less caliber because Mikhail Sergachev was a top 10 pick in the NHL draft, and that's no disrespect to Alex Romanov, who was drafted in the second round, but if Kirby Dach isn't playing the way he's playing, I feel like we'd be hearing about Alex Romanov a little bit more. At least there would be a microscope on him.
I think you're right. But at the same time, when people do bring up that Kirby Dach is playing well, the other guys almost never mention. And I think the biggest reason why is because you're looking at Caden Gooley and Arbor Jackeye and Jordan Harris and Justin Barron, like you said, and Jonathan Kovacevic, and it's almost as if it's what Kent Hughes said when he made the trade. We had a surplus at that position. We had a position of strength to deal from, and it's a lot to give up to get the player. We know what we were giving up. It's not like the Canadiens were excited to move on from Alexander Romanov, but he mentioned those guys. He even mentioned Jaden Struble, who's playing his senior year of college right now, and we'll see what the future holds for that player. But the point is, I do think it is a really interesting thing that we've made it this far into the season, and aside from you and I having this conversation right now, I don't think anybody's really talking about Romanov, and that's not. He's obviously doing good things in New York. We saw a great hit from him last week, and like I said, that unsavory highlight. But other than that, nobody's talking about him in Montreal, and you're right. It's partly to do with Kirby Dach's performance so far, but it's definitely to do with what the Canadiens have on their blue line and what they have coming.
Yeah, and just as a last point before we talk about something else that a lot of people are talking about is I found last year there were very few things to be excited about going into the Bell Center. One thing was very exciting that you weren't going to see it every night, but you would see it, every so often, that it was worth the price of admission. Was you were going to get a hit from Alex Romanov that would, just electrify the building and bring up the energy in the game and the crowd. So that was really nice. And I mean, I think that Arbor Jackeye has kind of taken on that role, but he's got low key offensive upside because a lot of people call him, this thing, he has this little bit of a misconception about him that he's a little bit of a goon out there just because he gets into so many fights. But I've said it because I've heard it being said on this podcast before that he's not a fighter that plays hockey. He's a hockey player that just happens to fight because Go ahead.
I don't know how low key his offensive ability is, to be honest with you. I mean, he's tremendous at getting the puck through the net, and that's the reason why he's got 4 goals, and it would have been 5 if Christian Dvorak didn't tip that puck last night. He leads rookie defensemen in goals. It's not an astounding number, but the idea that he can continue on through his career and put up 5 to 10 goals every year is totally not far-fetched. I don't think there's anything low key about his offensive game. And the initial comparison with this player and coming in, and it was an easy one to make just because they come from the same town, went to the same high school, play the same kind of robust style, can fight, are big, are physical, are throwback, is Ben Sherratt. And I always found that Ben Sherratt, when he was in Montreal, was undersold in terms of his ability from the offensive blue line in. Great at getting shots through. And the biggest common denominator between both players is not necessarily their style as much as it is the way they skate for the size that they are. And I think Arbor's greatest strength is his skating. He's got a good head too, that from the offensive blue line in, he finding ways to get shots through is a really unique talent in this league, especially as a defenseman. And any amateur out there who plays defense would understand how difficult it is to do that, even in leagues where you don't have guys who are automatically filling lanes and trying to block shots. It's a hard thing to do from 60 feet away to get a wrist shot hummed in the right locations to score goals. And this kid changes the angle. He finds ways to shoot through sticks and legs, and he gets a lot of shots through the net. And if you want a perfect contrast, look at Jordan Harris, go back to preseason where he couldn't get a single shot through, and he has all those offensive abilities, skating-wise, movement-wise, smarts. Caden Gooley as well, it's taken him time to find his way to get those shots through. This is a skill that Arbor has brought from the OHL to the NHL. He was not unheralded from an offensive perspective there a year ago, and it's showing now. And the idea that anybody thinks of him as a goon is totally ridiculous. I mean, this kid can really play, and he's only going to get better.
Well, that's it. And, it's rare that you see fighting these days, especially from the young guys. So that's why, I was having this conversation with a couple of my friends, a couple of weeks ago, and they're like, yeah, he's a big guy out there. You send him out there, he'll beat the crap out of anyone. Yeah, that's true. But the guy could play hockey. He's not one of those guys you used to dress for, 6 minutes a night and, just send him out there if you need some energy. No, you need defensive responsibility. He can handle it. You need offense. You need some pressure in the ozone. He can handle it. He looks like a really nice addition to this team. That was one of the unexpected parts of this season. And it's just, what more can we say? The defense, the future of the defense of this team is just, it's so bright, and it's nice to see that it's taking shape in front of our eyes. Something that's not so bright. We've made it officially 19 minutes. Kind of. We touched on it a little bit before, but we've now made it 20 minutes without really going in depth about the power play. So we're going to do it now. There was a graphic last night when the Canadiens got their first opportunity on the broadcast that they were 1 for 27 on their last 27 opportunities. They are now 1 for 29 by my count because they did not score one last night. what have you seen in practice? Because they got to be working on this. What have you been seeing that maybe adjustments that they're trying to make in practice when working on this thing?
Yeah, listen, I don't think they spend a whole lot of time practicing the power play on the ice. Like the guys that are on the power play get together and do things towards the end of practice. Martin St. Louis has said before, and he's not necessarily wrong about this, that it's hard to simulate a power play without an active penalty kill. It's not as if these guys can't pass the puck to each other. They're having trouble finishing the plays. Zone entry wise, they've been okay. At times they've been poor. At times they've been really good. The first play that they make off the zone entry has been a trouble spot, and it's going back a couple years now. Sustaining pressure and penetrating the inside of the ice once they actually get established has been a trouble spot, and it's because you have, instead of 3-4 weapons on the power play, there's 2. Like there's Suzuki, who's going to walk down his strong side and threaten to shoot or pass, which makes him the most dangerous player on the ice. And there's Caulfield, who's going to catch and release or one-time the puck. From the point, they don't have a shot that can scare anybody. Even if those guys are willing to shoot the puck, it's rare that they're going to be able to score with it. Down low, they're really missing Sean Monahan. Like Christian Dvorak is a decent player down low, but not as good as Monahan is. And you look at the second unit, that's the other factors. Like we look at the power play, you look at one unit, right? It's pretty much stacked for Montreal. The second unit is a hodgepodge of different players every night. Like it's Armia and Dadonov and Hoffman, and honestly, the strategy there is whoever's got an open look, take it, shoot it. And I just think there were times where Montreal's power play this season was unproductive, but looking very good. There were times where they were productive, and as a result of that momentum, they've hit a cold stretch, obviously, of late. Will they find it again? Yes. There is a fair amount of talent on the ice with these guys. One thing I will say is all the guys, smashing their keyboards or whatever it is and writing me tweets every 2 minutes about how Alex Burrows needs to be fired. Like, number one, Alex Burrows isn't playing on the power play, and number two, he is not designing the whole thing like he's Nostradamus trying to predict where everything is going. Like, Martin St. Louis is heavily involved. Trevor Letowski is heavily involved. The players themselves are heavily involved. It's a collaborative effort between everybody there. Will Burrows design certain plays? Yes. Will he work with those guys? Yes. Does Adam Nicholas work with them? Yes. Like, this is not a one-man operation thing. This is not Alex Burrows' fault that the power play is not humming along. It is a question of how the talent blends together and what the talent level is across the board. And so when you have two really unique, amazing threats out there and everybody else is, I don't want to say they're not talented. They're just, you got to have a lot of scoring threats on the ice for it to really work. And look at the power plays that really do. You've got Hedman up top with Kucherov and Stamkos and Point in the bumper. I mean, what do you think's going to happen? And Alex Killorn, who works the goal line. I mean, Kirk Muller used to say, "Show me good players, I'll show you good power play." Everybody thought he was the worst power play coach in the world. He's in Calgary now, and they've been pretty good since he's been there on the power play, and they've got some pretty good players and did over the last couple of years. So it's frustrating. I get it for everybody. Who it's most frustrating for is the Canadiens. Like, I asked Nick Suzuki, how sick are you of talking about this? And he's like, really sick of it. And we were in the room before they left for the road after the Tampa game. He said, it's really bad right now. And he doesn't get down on himself, but he does get angry and he does get frustrated. And it's understandable that this is a frustrating source for everybody, but especially the players.
Well, that's it, of course, because, when you see this, the player, I feel like, people forget that the players also are thinking about these things and they hear the same stats that we hear. And while they might say they're not paying attention, they know what's going on. So they know that they're not scoring either. It's just, like you said, it's just frustration all around because, you get one bounce and it could open up a floodgate, because there is, like you mentioned, some pretty good players, that are on the ice on that first unit they're all pretty good. You know,
it's not about good. It's about being cohesive, and you need two cohesive units, not just one. Because if you only have one, you know, half the time they're getting on the ice right after they just had a shift, and they're starting a power play, or the other half they're getting on the ice after the second unit goes on, because they were just on the ice, and the rhythm is broken before they even get there, and they have less time to do it. You know, you need two units that really threaten and make it difficult, or one absolutely super stacked, incredible unit that's been playing together for years and knows exactly that, you know, when Cole shoots the puck, they know where his miss is going so that they can keep the play alive. Like, it's when you watch Tampa's power play and you watch Kucherov and Stamkos across from each other, every time the puck is siphoned to either one of them for a one-time play, watch the other players. Watch where Point goes, watch where Killorn goes, watch where Stamkos goes. They keep so many plays alive, whether they've got, even if they set up the shot they want, they keep the plays alive beyond that. And like, it just takes years to build that type of chemistry. And the Canadiens have it with some of their players, but they don't have it with all five on the ice, and they don't have it with two units. So you can blame Alex Burrows all you want, but until these players get accustomed to playing with each other that much more, it's not going to change as much as you want. It better improve from here to the end of the season, because they do have enough talent to be better than they are right now.
Exactly. That's the key thing, is that they're better than what that number says. Last thing, because I know you're pressed for time here, so I appreciate you doing this. Last thing, just quick news and notes, because there was a couple headlines, making its way on Twitter. It made it onto some radio stations that fall under the network that you work for out in Edmonton. So I saw this on a clip on Twitter in Sportsnet in Edmonton. They were talking about Joel Edmundson potentially being a target for there. Is there any noise to that? Any real smoke? Where there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing happening?
Yeah, well, I only wrote about 1,000 words about it for Sportsnet.ca a week ago. But yes, I mean, when I was in Edmonton, all the talk from everybody there was about Joel Edmundson, about how he'd be the perfect fit. Does Ken Holland know that Edmundson could be available? Yes. Does Kent Hughes expect that the phone will come ringing for that player down the line here as we move into the more important portion of the season, with a playoff pedigree and a player that's not a rental and has another year to give us $3.5 million? And if there's a team out there that has playoff ambitions and ambitions to go deep in the playoffs and is not a fan of giving up assets for rentals, Ken Holland fits that bill. So there's, where there is smoke, there is fire. Will Ken Holland be the only person interested in a Joel Edmundson? No. And from a cap perspective, you look at any team that would be looking to acquire him, they'd probably need Montreal to take a contract back. I know that Kent Hughes is not going to have an interest in eating money on Edmundson, because he's got one more year after this one. But there will be interest, and he's gonna navigate that interest carefully, because as much as the rookie defensemen are doing well in Montreal, he doesn't want to leave them with nobody on the blue line to look up to, right? Like, Mike Matheson is hurt right now. We don't know how long he'll be hurt. David Savard is hurt. We don't know how long he'll be hurt. The idea that Joel Edmundson is walking out the door anytime between now and the next couple of weeks is certainly far-fetched. As we get closer to the trade deadline, it becomes a significant possibility, because the player has great playoff pedigree. He's a leader. He has his value. As we know, it's been set over the last couple of years when you look at that type of defenseman. It's funny, whenever they play for whatever team they play for, and I see the Montreal fans on a daily basis saying, he's this and he's that. Every team out there seems to understand what the value is of adding those types of players for a playoff run, okay? So, will there be a market that opens up? Will it start with Edmonton's interest? I think so. They will definitely be in there. We'll see what other teams join the mix and what the Canadiens will potentially look at in terms of what would be the value coming back to them versus what would be the value of holding on. Because they're not in an emergency situation to trade Joel Edmundson. They do have him under contract for one more year. And if they decide that he's more valuable to their team in a mentorship role with what they have going on their blue line right now, they'll hold on and they'll have another opportunity come trade deadline, but the next trade deadline. But I think between now and this one, the value probably will come in via trade. And I think there's a strong chance that a team out there, and Edmonton would be right at the top of the list, would take a swing at him.
Well, there you go. There you have it. And we're right there, 10:30 on the nose, at least 10:30 Eastern time. Eric, thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of this road trip.
My pleasure, man. It was fun.
All right. That was Eric Engels of Sportsnet. The Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by La Cage. If the last time you went to La Cage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you go back to La Cage because the menu will surprise you. Also brought to you by Playground. Playground has over 600 machines, poker tournaments, and Playground casino games, daily promotions, and unmatched customer service. Why go anywhere else? Located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes away from downtown Montreal, it is now time for Sick Sports Cards.
Sick Sports Cards. Presented by Sports La Tornade.
Sick Sports Cards is presented by Sports La Tornade. Sports cards, collectibles, and more. Visit the store at 1 Avenue de la Fabrique in Vaudreuil-Dorion. And now joining us is our good friend, Tornado Chris. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And I got to say, okay, I picked up a pillow from your store about 3 weeks ago, I want to say, and I haven't yet given it a shout out on the show. And the reason for that being is because, and I felt really bad about it. I felt like texting you, believe it or not. But the reason for that is because I actually had a Secret Santa gift exchange that only took place just a couple days ago on Saturday. So I couldn't really out the because all my friends listen to the podcast, so I couldn't really out the gift because it kind of would have given it away who I had in the giveaway. So I just wanted to say thank you again for the pillow. My friend loved it.
No problem. You're welcome.
All right, so let's get to it. We're going to talk a little bit about obviously sports cards, and I'm interested to know, we had just the craziest World Cup possible with the crowning, the king of soccer now, Lionel Messi. If you bought a pack of cards, like, I don't know, a booster pack of 10 cards, let's say, and one of them came and it was Lionel Messi, the premium edition one from the World Cup. You bought that at the beginning of the tournament and, he just wins the World Cup. What happens to the price? And, how significant is that increase right there?
Well, it is a huge difference, and everything that's achieved during a World Cup or a Stanley Cup or any kind of championship like that, winning the MVP is also another big factor. So anytime that you can win a championship, win the MVP, the card is definitely going to probably go up. It's going to go up or even double.
Mm-hmm. Right, and like it's just super interesting to see because it's a lot. I mean, I'm sure you've talked about this with Tony, but it's a lot like the stock market, is it not?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, we'll get into it. Like who's hot, who's not, stuff like that. It's exactly like the stock market. You got to watch your players and see whether you're buying or selling at the time of what's going on in the game itself.
All right, so I mean, you just mentioned it right there. What's hot, what's not? Let's get to who's hot, who's not. Let's get to it. What do you got for us?
So perfect. So tonight I wanted to start off by saying that last week was a new release for hockey cards. So we have this new box here. It's called SP Game Used. It hit the shelves last week. So in this box, you'll find one pack of 6 NHL trading cards. So there's only 6 cards in each box. It does come. It's SP Game Used. That's the name of it because a lot of the patches and stuff are game used within the set. So I brought up 2 cards. Like you see the patch, the auto. You have an auto there, Spencer Knight. You have the patch in there. So it's a thick card. That's an option. That was one card that was pulled out of the box, and then you have also. This is more of a manufactured patch. So this is a Nathan McKinnon manufactured patch. It's pretty cool, the Nate Dogg patch. So, McKinnon's a well-liked guy in sports cards world. So they're really cool.
We'll talk right now because I know we're gonna play a little bit of a game here. We'll call it buy or sell. Just curious, because you know me. We spoke a little bit when I visited the store, and I'm a big football guy, and yeah, I'm a big Cincinnati Bengals fan. So let's just take Joe Burrow for example. Right now, he's in the race for the MVP, and with that, he's playing really well. The Bengals are playing well. They look good. Is that conducive to a buying market? Do you want to capitalize on that? Like grab him now because, hey, he might win the MVP. But if he doesn't, does that really diminish it all that much? Or is it really a case by case situation there?
It could be case by case. Obviously, the number one factor I always say is actually the market city of where he plays. So if you're a New York Yankee or you're, like in the NFL, a Dallas Cowboy or something like that, obviously the market cities are huge. Then after that, championships, records, you have all different factors that go into that. But as like Joe Burrow, if he's looking or he's in potential for an MVP, then yeah, you might want, if you see that in advance, you might want to jump on something now rather than later, because it will go up if he does win. And at that point, you need to see, like, it'll go up if he gets the MVP, but what if he gets the MVP and he wins a Super Bowl? Then we're talking something even bigger. So you have to kind of believe in how much you're going to invest. So if you're going to invest in Joe Burrow, you hope that he wins the MVP, which is great. But if he wins the Super Bowl as well, then your investment is really going to go up.
So last one before we get to buy or sell is this is a comment from a viewer. Kelly writes, "Will Ovi's card have more value now?" Now, my question is similar to that, in that his card must be going up in value, but does it matter which edition of a card? If I just pull out, my old shoebox in the corner there and whip out an Ovechkin card, does that one have more value? Or is, if it's we're talking everything's in pristine condition, is there a difference there between cards?
There is a difference in value. Now I'll say every Ovechkin card will and is going up currently, except you can have a $1 Ovechkin card that might go up to $3, or you might have a $5,000 Ovechkin card that's going to go up to $8,000 or $9,000. So yes, there's different varieties. There's different costs, depending on which card you actually do have, but they are trending upwards. Every time they mention the name Gordie Howe, Wayne Gretzky, chasing all these guys, it's going up. Like this week, he scored a hat trick. Last week against Chicago, he scored a hat trick. The next day, people are coming to my store asking me about Ovechkin. So it's definitely a hot topic.
All right, so let's get to it. Buy or sell. You're going to test my card stock market knowledge. I'm ready to go here. I think I'm going to nail this thing.
Okay, perfect. So the way I want to explain it first for the viewers is that I have a list of hot and cold right now. So who's hot on the market, who's not. And I'm going to basically ask Matt, as an investor, I want to know if you think right now the guy, like if a guy's at his peak value right now, you would actually be a seller, because if he's at his peak value and you think you could get your top dollar for that card, you would be a seller. Versus I think he's going to go even more and he's going to go even higher and be worth more. Then you would be a buyer and you're going to get on the buyer train. So I'm going to kind of go through the list with you and you can tell me what you think. And it's really a personal opinion. There's no right or wrong answer. Like we said, it's like the stock market. So what I wanted to do is we'll start with the not so hot guys, which we're not going to play the game on that. We're going to go more with the hot guys. I just want to for the viewers, mention some of the guys that are trending down right now. And I'm not going to pick on anybody in particular. I have a quick list. I put 5 names. So at the beginning of the year, one of the guys that did trend up was Shane Pinto, Ottawa Senator Shane Pinto. He was, in the talk for Rookie of the Year, stuff like that. He's now trending down. He's slowed down a little bit, and he's one of the guys that I have on my list as not so hot. Another guy is Jonathan Huberdeau, who is, obviously has not adapted that well to his new team, and he has been struggling. So he's another guy that's on the lower list. Ryan O'Reilly, who's not having a great season in St. Louis. He has come back a little bit since the beginning, but not enough to up his value in cards. So everything so far, Ryan O'Reilly, from what I've seen, is trending down. Another guy is Teuvo Teravainen. Teravainen was also a card that was very stable, like under the radar kind of guy, but now is kind of trading, he's trending down. And the obvious one right now, which it's not a card that's going to go down significantly, but it's a small hit, is Tom Brady. So for the football people, his biggest losing season this year is hurting him.
So let me touch on that, because Tom Brady, it's super interesting. That's a really interesting case and an interesting name you bring up, because there is that legacy factor, right? So, obviously 7 Super Bowls, most winning quarterback of all time, has basically every record in the book. How much can a season like this really hit the value?
Well, that's why I don't think it goes down that much. We're talking really small percentages in that case, because he has the rings, because he has the records, stuff like that. So he's one that, although I put him on my trending down list, he's one that will be a very low percentage.
All right. I mean, that seems, that seems to me right there. That's a buy now, because while his things are going down, his value's going down. The second this guy retires, boom, everyone forgets about this season, and they're all remembering the championships.
Absolutely right. So that's why I think that one you'd be a buyer, because buy low now. And like you said, when everybody forgets and the records all come out, and the Hall of Fame and all these prestigious things that are going to come, definitely going to go up after retirement.
All right, let's do this thing. Let's hit me with some names here.
Okay, perfect. So actually, I'm going to start the number one name on the list for hot right now in sports cards, and you're going to like this because it's an NFL thing. So what do you think right now of Brock Purdy?
My personal opinion is I think the story's fantastic. Mr. Irrelevant. He's doing his thing over in San Francisco, but man, there's a part of me, I love the story and I want him to succeed so badly, but he's that guy that he's a third string quarterback for a reason. I love the story, and he seems like, he's got a good head on his shoulders. I want him to succeed, but man, I would sell that. I just don't think, what? Yeah. No, I would, what? At this very moment, I would hold it, because I think there's definitely a great chance that the 49ers could win the Super Bowl. And if he wins the Super Bowl, sell that immediately.
I was going to bring up that point with Super Bowl, because there's a lot of talk about San Francisco being a contender. So you never know. That's the one thing where you got to really analyze it, and you got to, are you going all in or are you not? And most of his cards right now, they're all in his college uniform. So there's not a lot of, San Fran cards out there. So yeah, he was one that came up. He's really going up on the scale. So yeah, I wanted to start off with that one. The next one is a very obvious one. So we touched base on it before. Lionel Messi. So are we seeing the top right now, or is there more to come, or what do you think?
So I think in terms of value, there's got to be more to come, just because it's in the same vein as Tom Brady. When we're talking Tom Brady, Lionel Messi, Alex Ovechkin, these are some of the best, if not the best, of all time. So again, it's one of those things where, he just won a World Cup. You would think that's going to be the peak, But again, when it comes to big players like that, you got to wait for the retirement. He's up there in age. It's going to come. Just be patient. And I feel like once he retires, that number is going to just skyrocket because that's when they stop making the card, right?
Right, exactly. So that's one thing that I think about Messi is right now he's at his peak because he just won the World Cup. He was the MVP, all that. So right now his card is like, I don't want to say unaffordable, but it's right up there where people look at the card. People look at the card and they're just like, wow, is that really the price of that Messi? And I'm like, yeah, he just won the World Cup. And he was phenomenal in the final game. So everything to his advantage. Let's say he does not play in another World Cup, and he starts to have less, like his career starts to slow down. And with this club team, he plays a little bit less, and then he kind of teeters out. Maybe his card will go down a little bit until, like you say, he retires, and then everyone forgets about the last 6 months or in a year where Messi was kind of lower, and then all of a sudden it goes up again. So
yeah, it's with the greats. It's just, I feel like it's kind of like an old, like a painting of an artist. I don't know artists, but it's like a Picasso, we'll call it. When he's alive, creating his best stuff, sure, you might want to sell it, but hey, when this guy calls it quits, that thing is going to skyrocket.
Yeah, exactly. So we can't talk about Messi without mentioning the name Mbappe. So let's give it a go. Mbappe.
Okay, so I'm going to shoot a question back at you. Yeah. What type of, are we talking World Cup card or his club card?
We're talking World Cup card right now.
World Cup card, I would sell that. He just won the MVP. No one really remembers second place after a while. Yeah, there's talks. That was the greatest World Cup final of all time. Give it 2 years or a year, because in 2 years there's going to be the Euros. They'll be talking about it again. Give it a year. No one's going to remember that France was in the final. Everyone's going to remember that Lionel Messi has that World Cup. No one's going to remember that Mbappe won the Golden Boot.
But don't forget, like Mbappe with his age, he is going to go back there, right?
Right, he'll be back. So, I mean, I guess original card. Oh man, this is tough.
How many World Cups does Mbappe have? So that's a question. If he's 24 years old now, how many more World Cups is he going to play? And we all know that if we start another World Cup in the next 4 years, France is right up there again.
Right.
So it's a good question.
It's tough because I feel like there's all the hype around, you want to cash in on the hype. That's what it all is, right? So you have the World Cup game that just got played. He was the MVP of the tournament. It was one of the greatest finals of all time. And he scored a hat trick in the final. I mean, what more? It's tough, how quickly are we going to hang on to this? Because if it's a 2022 edition of the card, you got to sell that right now. You got to sell that right now. If it's just his international card, I could see hanging on to it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to take it down. I'm going to go back to hockey now. So right now we have one of the hottest. Well, I would say the hottest player in the NHL. He's a scoring machine. He's big. He's solid. Tage Thompson. Tage Thompson cards right now are trending up big time. Everybody out there in the card world, all over the different websites and different Facebook groups, you name it, Tage Thompson's name is just out there all the time.
I love it. I'm gonna buy his card right now because he's young. This is his first season. No, we'll call it second season. Second season right now where he's really taken off, because last season it was kind of like, whoa, where did this come from? 37 goals or whatever he ended with. Whereas this season it's like, okay, he's got 26 and we are only 35 games into the season or whatever the number is, where the sky is the limit for this guy.
Yeah. And he's not scoring fluke goals. He's scoring these are big time goals. He's got one heck of a shot. and he's got good hands. He's big. He's got the size. So I agree with you. I think right now you could buy Tage Thompson and safe that it will go up even more.
That's it. I mean, if he's a player like, I don't know if I can't think of an example of a player that came on late in his career, but if he's one of those guys that's 30 and just now he's playing like he's playing, you could sell that, no problem. But the age he's at and the way he's coming on, wow, just you gotta. I know it's tempting, but in my opinion, and in yours, hang on to that one, or buy it or hang on to it if you have it, buy it if you don't.
Exactly. Okay, so now I'll take you to another guy who last year trended down quite a bit, and this year has got it back on track. And as of last week, he was actually surpassing Tage Thompson in popularity. But Jason Robertson, he has had a slow week this week. Slower, but he had a heck of a start to the season. And same thing, his name was hot. We have people coming in the store asking me for Jason Robertson. People are bringing cards to get graded, a lot of Jason Robertson. So is he going to go more? Is he going to peak? What do you think?
I think the hope, so I'm going to say this. He's 23 years old. And the hope with Robertson, because like you said, I'm taking notes over here. This piece of paper, it's not empty. It's not there just for show. With what you said about you're hoping it's a big market team, I feel like you hang on to that card because he's 23 years old, or you're trying to buy that card, especially if you hear that the value is going down, and you hope he keeps doing his thing, scoring goals nonstop, but then you hope he goes to a big market team because. Like you said, if you're Aaron Judge on the New York Yankees, if you're, Micah Parsons on the Dallas Cowboys, that's some serious scratch we're talking about because a lot more people are going to want your card than just, with all due respect to Dallas Stars fans out there, there's more New York Rangers fans than Dallas Stars fans.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people out there that do what you call a PC. It's a personal collection of one player. So some people collect only one player and strictly that they trade all of their cards for that one player. So when you talked about Market City, it's funny because Jason Robertson, let's just say tomorrow, if he was traded to the Montreal Canadiens, those people with that PC of Jason Robertson would be laughing and they would love it because their card would definitely go up. So just a note about the Market City.
So I'm loving this because, I'm taking notes. I'm taking a lot of notes and I'm kind of trying to translating them into just, I guess the message for me that I'm taking is buy Joe Burrow now, right now, buy him now because it's only going to go up. If you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, or you took a big hit if you own a Jalen Hurts card because it doesn't with his injury. I don't know if he's going to win the MVP anymore, but hey, who's to say he can't do it again next year? Buy that card now because these are the stars of the future we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Before I let you go, I want to throw a couple questions at you from some of our viewers. We'll start with this one because again, we brought up the Montreal Canadiens, so we'll stick with them. How high can Cole Caulfield rookies go?
Okay, so like in like I said before, there's different sets. So as there's still sets from 21-22 that are not out yet. So with COVID, Upper Deck got behind in their production. So now like this box that I just showed you was a 21-22. So Cole Caulfield possibility in that box. But that's like I want to say a medium range set. If you get the cup is like the highest end card you can get in all of the hockey cards. The cup 21-22, which will have Caulfield in it, is not out yet. So those ones are the ones that are going to be the most valuable, but they are still going up on the daily because of his continuous success. He's scoring a goal every game, 2 goals the other night against Arizona. So his card is going up. And the hype around the city is unreal. I've never sold so many pillows and so much, jerseys and cards and stuff. The kid has got a real buzz around him. So if I was a collector, get your Cole Caulfields now. They're going up, and they're going to keep on going up.
Well, so here's my question. He's a fan favorite in Montreal, and we're obviously in Montreal. Are there prices that are regional? Like if we're in Cleveland right now, Nick Chubb is the best player on that team on the Browns, but really Nick Chubb is, he's a good running back, but he's not one of the greats. He's on a kind of a crappy team, small market team. Does location play a factor?
100%. I go to card shows all over the place. The biggest card show that I go to is in Toronto. That's the biggest show in Canada. And I don't have to drive any further than Toronto to see that Cole Caulfield is a Montreal guy and everyone loves him here. Because if you mention his name there, they'll block you out with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner and all that. So absolutely, it has a factor.
All right, that's good to know. We got time for about one or two more. So Sammy and in yellow, just pop them up. Are there any players you're buying right now for the future?
I was until this week. I started last year. I went hard on Tim Stützle. I saw Tim Stützle play in the World Juniors, and he was a guy that had my eye on. And last year, he didn't have such a great year. But this year, I felt like this was his breakthrough year. And he was really doing well. He didn't have a ton of goals, but lots of assists. He was a point per game, and I was feeling it. I was feeling like this is the guy that's coming up. And very unfortunate injury this past week. I don't know how long he's going to be out, but it's going to hurt. That's going to hurt. Injuries are the unfortunate part. But Tim Stützle was one. Tage Thompson, we've already mentioned him. That was another guy that obviously after last year, it was so under the radar last year. Like nobody talked about it, nothing like that. There's a few players actually on the Buffalo Sabres that people should watch out for. Tage Thompson's not the only one. Dylan Cousins is another. John Jason Paterka, great little rookie, not too expensive, but trending up. So, Cole Caulfield,
last one before I let you go, because I got a question now, and you piqued my interest, and I was just thinking about and I'm sorry for the fans that are listening that are hockey guys, but I'm stuck on this football thing because it's so interesting to me. Let's say we have a Super Bowl like we had a couple of years ago when the Denver Broncos met the Seattle Seahawks, and the MVP race is the MVP of the game I'm talking about was Malcolm. I think it was Malcolm Smith. No, that was the year. That was the year they beat that was the year they beat. But it was a defensive player. I forget, the name's escaping me. It was a linebacker. Anyways, linebacker for the Seahawks wins the MVP. Is that that price is going to skyrocket? That's one where you take advantage of the. If it's a position player like that, you take advantage of the time now, right?
You do, but you'll see in NFL cards, defensive players do not get nearly the love that they should. So their cards are already starting very low. Obviously, you win an MVP, your card goes up, but it's one of those rare occasions where I think it'll go up and then people will forget about it. A defensive player is people are all about, in hockey, it's about scoring goals. In football, it's about throwing touchdowns. All the quarterbacks are loved. They're the high thing. And unexplainable, baseball, pitchers don't get the love. So
really?
Yeah. So
that's super interesting to me.
Yeah. So in baseball, people are more after Aaron Judge because he hits so many home runs, but I don't get it. Like you could throw, Cy Young season, you can have a strikeout record, and the pitchers don't get the love that the hitters do.
Wow. That's crazy to me because, they're, baseball, it's very rare that you'll go to a sport and hope for, not necessarily hope for defensive play, but, if you're seeing two really good pitchers, going at it, they're both at 9 strikeouts in the 7th inning, you're watching a fantastic game. And that's wild to me. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's take one more question. So Sammy and Yellow, just pop one more up before we shut this thing down. Which cards usually pick up more value, NHL or NFL?
Pick up more value. I want to say NFL because it's more of, it's more American. Their market is much bigger than ours here in Canada. It's not the same manufacturer. So if you're talking NFL, you're looking at a Panini card versus a hockey card, which is Upper Deck. So they're not the same manufacturer. The football cards, for an equivalent box of football, is usually more expensive than a hockey, but it holds its value like a little bit more than a hockey. So I'm going to have to say NFL on that one, just because of the U.S. market.
Well, there you go. There you have it. Chris, thank you very much for joining me. Love your store. It was a beautiful, beautiful place. I will certainly be back there to just, stare at the showcase of football cards for I could look at that. I could have looked at that thing for hours on end. Seriously. So just thank you very much for joining us.
All right. Thanks for having me.
All right, that is it for your Tuesday edition of the Sick Podcast. My name is Matt Ohayon. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching. And if you haven't already, please hit the like button on YouTube, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and follow us on Instagram. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Have a great night.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different, 8.6, intense by nature, and La Cage. If the last time you went to La Cage was when the Habs won the cup, it's time you went back to La Cage. The menu will surprise you.